This is a regular meeting. The Board of School Trustees of the Lebanon Community School Corporation will meet in regular session at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, March 17th, 2026 at Lebanon High School in the Herman Wells Community Center. This meeting is a meeting of the school board in public for purposes of conducting school corporation business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There will be time for public participation as indicated by the agenda. The meeting site is fully accessible, and any person requiring further accommodation should contact the superintendent at the school corporation central office. Mr. Havlin, can you go ahead and start us off with the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Havlin. Currently present is myself, Mr. Havlin, and Lisa Hutchinson is coming to us on the stream there. We do have a quorum with 3. Absent is Trey Hendricks, and I think Mr. Parks should be joining us here in just a couple of minutes. I'll go ahead and read the mission statement for us. Lebanon Community School Corporation challenges everyone every day to reach a new best. And then moving on to approval of the minutes, you should have the regular meeting minutes from our February 17th, 2026 regular meeting and executive session in your background notes. Any questions or anything about those?
I'll make a motion to approve.
And I'll go ahead and second that. All in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. That takes us to Dr. Milliman with your superintendent's announcements and celebrations.
Thank you, Mr. Klauser. Just a few announcements this evening. I wanted to take a moment to recognize student athlete leaders. We hosted a large Sagamore Conference student athlete leadership conference this last week. We had athletic leaders from all schools within our athletic conference, and it's always good to promote that leadership within our organizations, but also within our community. And so and I apologize, these weren't in your background notes, and I have some great pictures of those students that you'll see forthcoming. So congratulations to the coaches, Mr. Levine, and the conference for putting on a great athletic leadership conference, and we were happy to host that this year. Wanted to congratulate Deanna Nybarger, our student services coordinator. She attended the Whole Child Summit this past week or 2 weeks ago, but also she was a presenter at that conference. She presented on our work that we're doing with mind-body medicine, with our staff, the mental health work we're doing, our positive behavior interventions and supports program, where she's been working very hard to create some consistent strategies and practices among our PBIS IAs within all 4 of our elementary schools. As you recall, those are funded through our operating referendum to help our students make good choices throughout their 180 days with us. I understand that she presented to a packed room, and it was very, very well received and represented Lebanon very well. Hopefully there was no one there that was going to try to poach her from us, so we'll do our best to hang on to her. Also, congratulations to her and the team. You may recall that we were notified several months ago that we were in line to receive a second year of the comprehensive mental health grant, but that funding had been put on hold, and we were notified this past week that they've released those funds. So we will now be able to put those funds to use in the same way we did previously, with more mind-body medicine opportunities for our staff, as well as promoting the We Are Tigers, which you approved recently as well, and that work. So as you know, that will be creating a consistent student leadership platform K through 12 throughout the district, and so that will really do a lot of good in promoting that work. And that is all I have for my announcements this evening.
Okay. So moving on then to informational items. Let's go to the construction renovation update.
Nothing this month.
All right. Legislative update.
Well, they gavelled the session to an end since our last meeting. As Mrs. Hutchinson well knows, this is part of her world as well. It's supposed to be a short session, which means it's supposed to be small in size and scope of bills. That was not the case in this short session. There were many bills affecting public education. We are sorting through that. We will be taking a team of administrators to the CISC offices, the pyramids, next month for a legislative briefing from CCHA law firm, does that on behalf of CISC. So they'll be pulling apart that legislation. Some of the highlights of the legislation, however, one of the main highlights is the cell phone. People were using the term ban, but the cell phone law of use in schools. On first glance, the bill looks pretty straightforward, but then now Mr. Clauser's world enters the chat. The devil's in the details. So now we're getting into the part that what does the definition of that word in the bill mean? Is it a traditional definition of that word? For that, the word would be inaccessible. The law says that cell phones must be powered off, stored, and inaccessible throughout the entire school day. The previous law was during instructional time. The new revised law is throughout the entire instructional day. That part is not ambiguous. So they are not to be out in use for the entire school day from the time the students step into the schoolhouse doors to the time the end of the day. You're going to ask me how that's going to be enforced consistently, and those are the things that we're working through with our administrative team. We, of course, lean into our colleagues and peers throughout the state. We don't want to be on an island alone, right? So we have a lot of collaboration and communication, not only with the superintendents in Boone County, but, of course, throughout the region. That will be part of our conversation in that legislative update, but this is one that's going to give folks a lot of pause and a lot of anxiety. It certainly will give our teachers a lot of anxiety, as I know they want to spend their time instructing, not necessarily policing. And so I'll have more to come on that as we bring handbooks to you, and I expect a lot of questions from parents, perhaps board members this evening. But that's the big one. Just various tweaks to school funding was part of it. I don't think we saw major changes to SB1 at the end of the day. So we are still going down the road of working with our professional partners and seeing what's going to happen with school finance and school funding, and how Lebanon will be affected by those decisions. A large, what was billed as a deregulation bill, House Bill 1004, did pass. It was kind of the, sometimes they call them Christmas tree bills, because by the end of the 11th hour, there's many ornaments that are applied to said tree before it gavels. And that happened 1004. So some things were thrown in at the last minute, metaphorically, that maybe were a surprise to some of our associations. So we're going through that. But there's some good things in that bill, some redundancy in reporting, that perhaps we won't have to send the same data in 3 different reports to the state and things of that nature. So not all negative throughout that process. So we'll let the board know through my weekly notes to you if anything significantly changes. And after that CCHA update with all the superintendents, I'm sure I'll have some more information as well. But that would be the highlights of the legislative session. Cell phones will be on everybody's mind here very soon.
All right. Any questions over that?
You have questions, Mr. Haffel?
I'm sure we'll be getting plenty of resources from the
Students
state
in our
if we do,
schools.
right?
It makes me pause, because like you said, how are the teachers going to be policing this and taking time out of their educational day to do this, and how is this enforced at the school level? How's it enforced at the state level? There's just a lot of questions I have about it.
All right. Pre-K funding.
Yeah, just wanted to touch again. I think, as we've talked about funding and we've made some adjustments to tuition, I think it's just good to kind of keep this item on the front burner a little bit in conversation. As we shared at the last meeting, we have initiated a sliding scale for tuition for a number of students at each of those levels, and the number of students that we would apply that sliding scale to would be based on what the actual operating costs of the pre-K are. Continue to get questions about things like how does the operating referendum play into pre-K funding. So I thought I'd take a moment tonight and talk about that briefly. Maybe I shared this quickly with the board, so I'll slow my speech a little bit during this part of the presentation. Just a reminder that going back to our campaign for the operating referendum in 2022, we talked about this as being one of our goals, and also it emerged in our community as a need. Early childhood education is a need, not just in Lebanon, but in the entire Boone County. Since that time, the Boone EDC has initiated a survey, put together a lot of data to show that there is a deficit in the number of seats in our county to meet the pre-K needs, not just pre-K, but preschool and child care. So not just limited to those 4-year-olds and 3 and 4-year-olds and what we think is a traditional pre-K. So we talked about that and promised that we would attempt to apply operating referendum dollars to the degree possible to create and offer a pre-K opportunity for our community. And we were able to do that with the adjustment to our AV, and as you know, even the board, even with us reducing the voter approved 15 cents, we are not levying 15 cents, but we were able to leverage operating referendum revenue to the pre-K. It's important to back up and talk a little bit about what the operating referendum pays for other than pre-K, to kind of put that in context. 100% of our Lebanon Schools Police is funded by the operating referendum. Lebanon Community School, Zionsville Community Schools and Western Boone in our county receive approximately 50% of their school SRO funds from the public safety lit tax. Lebanon Schools does not receive any lit dollars for our schools police. So 100% of our police department is funded by the referendum. What gets lost, I think, sometimes is the instructional costs for our buildings, and it's not through anyone's fault that folks may just assume that those positions are funded through tuition. But the reason we are able to have dedicated art, music, physical education, and STEM teachers at each of the 4 elementaries is because of the operating referendum. We would likely not be able to fund dedicated art, music, PE, and STEM teachers at all 4 elementaries without that revenue, which would mean that buildings would share those staff members. Not particularly efficient, not particularly effective. Once you factor in teacher travel, they're at one school one day, not at in another school another day. Now that really creates challenges for our elementaries in scheduling. When you have 6th grade levels, rotating them through the specials, now that student may be getting art every other cycle instead of every cycle because that art teacher is dedicated to that building. That is funded by operating referendum revenue. The PBIS, which is the Positive Behavior Intervention Supports Instructional Assistants that are employed at each of the 4 elementary schools, that is a referendum expense. Our 3rd instrumental music teacher is a referendum expense. The 4 STEM teachers I mentioned at the elementaries, an additional STEM teacher at the middle school was added, also made possible by referendum funds. All of these were the promises made during that referendum campaign, as well as the pre-K. So we have leveraged then on top of all of those things, give or take $600,000, a little north of $600,000 of operating referendum funding and revenue for the operations of the pre-K. So to be clear on what that means that affected the tuition cost to pay for the instructors for everyone who attends the pre-K. That's not a selective application of who has a reduced, that's just reducing the overall operations cost of that, of the pre-K. We then stretched that budget. My colleague to my left would say we went outside the budget to create some type of a sliding scale in year one of the pre-K by adding another $150,000. So we are at approximately $750,000 of operating referendum funding that is leveraged to the pre-K starting here in year one. That 600,000 plus will only increase year over year as it's covering insurance, utilities, both of which are increasing rapidly. It does cover, we mentioned the SRO costs, full-time school nurse, the principal, secretary, all of the operations of the building, supplies, et cetera. So those costs will only increase over time as well. So the tuition dollars for pre-K, which was always advertised as a tuition-based program from the jump, we advertised that. We knew that this would be a tuition-based program. Why? The state of Indiana does not provide tuition support for pre-K students in Indiana. Tuition begins at grade K. There's no per student funding for enrollment for pre-K. When we launched our campaign for the operating referendum, at that time, the On My Way pre-K was not only fully operational, if you will, with funding, it was expanding at that time. Governor Holcomb was in the process of expanding those funds. In the last, Mr. Hunt, 18 months or so, funding for On My Way pre-K has now been capped at 2,500 students for the entire state. So the chances of Lebanon or students attending Tiger Cub pre-K being eligible for On My Way pre-K dollars is, as my dad used to say, slim to none, and slim saddle him up, or something along those lines, right? So it's not in the cards for On My Way pre-K dollars to be leveraged. So that lands on our parents or on our community, a business community, or municipalities, whatever it might be, public entities, to help close that gap. And so that is why we are launching another campaign to have a preschool access fund to be able to have some sustainable dollars over time to be able to make this access to pre-K more affordable. And in the same way as we're leveraging referendum dollars, that would be the access fund would be leveraged in the same manner. So I want to make that clear as well. We're not singling out, okay, you're going to come in and interview to decide whether you qualify for the tuition assistance. These are not one-off interview situations. If you meet the income requirement and we have those number of seats at that level available at that time, when you've submitted that information, you will be eligible to receive that tiered tuition support. So we know we need to have so many slots at full tuition, so many slots at tier 1, so many slots at tier 2. Will there be some movement among that throughout the school year? Of course, because we have students who will move in, we have students who will move out during the school year. That will be true in the pre-K just like it will in any other building. So the number of students receiving those tiers could fluctuate during the school year, but that would be enrollment dependent. But we have to start the year saying we need these pot of dollars. You may be sitting there saying, oh, I didn't think about students moving away. What happens if we hire the teacher and students move away? Well, we pay the teacher, right? So now we're in another deficit situation. So now this is, again, where the operating referendum, where our education fund or whatever funding we do have would have to be leveraged in order to keep that teacher employed, even if our enrollment might dip below what we projected as the budget needed. A good friend to my left puts in a lot of contingencies in our budget, so we hope to build a lot of that in so we mitigate that loss. But the reality is there will be some of that. because your enrollment will fluctuate over time. So there's a lot there to that, but I did want to just take a step back and just kind of maybe more methodically walk you through the funding and what funds are being used for that and why this is a tuition-based program. I'm happy to answer any other additional questions or clarify anything, and Mr. Dennis and I'd be happy to do that.
No, I think that's really helpful. I know that's one of the main questions I've gotten is why we're charging for this once they're kindergartners. They're not, or we're not. So I think that's helpful, a helpful point to understand that this is not state funded in any way. This is all community based. Now, if I can take you back a little farther, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot,
Sure.
but specifically regarding the pre-K, can you just briefly kind of explain the benefits of what a program like ours does for kids
Sure.
in our community?
Sure. I don't have the exact statistics, but the benefit is not only for the student, but that's our primary focus. Obviously, that if a student is kindergarten ready, they have a much higher chance of being successful academically, socially, in school, and staying in school and being successful. Probably a term not used as much as it should be is self-efficacy. We're talking about efficacy. Certainly self-esteem is embedded into efficacy, but a quality pre-K setting creates in a student their belief in their ability to do hard things. Right? That's where that foundation is built, that we can do hard things. We have some signs throughout our district in some of our classrooms that say that exact thing, that we can do hard things. And that begins at age 4. We're not running it like a boot camp, those types of hard things. But we're challenging, students can be challenged and they can fail and try again, right? And understand the emotions that go with trying and failing, right? And we can work through that with them so that when they come to kindergarten, not only do they know their letters and their colors and the sounds of the letters, but they also know how to work as a team. They also know how to, work with their friends and solve problems, right? And so it is just critical to that development. Then from a town, city, region, state, national level, it has an economic benefit because the more successful the students are being kindergarten ready, the more successful through school, the more successful citizens they become, and productive citizens and adjusted citizens, and tax-paying citizens if you're sitting on a town council or you're a senator or representative. So there are studies that talk about for every dollar invested in early childhood education, you get X dollars back in economic help for a community. Depending on the research study, that varies between $7 and $13 back. To me, that's a much better investment than having to deal with less than desirable outcomes and choices that citizens may make because they weren't well adjusted and they didn't have that self-efficacy and belief in themselves to do it. So it's a benefit for the community economically, and it's a benefit for our students who we're ultimately here for. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
very helpful. Thank you. Any other questions, follow-up?
No, we also got some good news about some legislation that was passed that could be an assistance.
That's correct,
But
yes.
it opens up other avenues for other dollars
Yes.
because of that very reason right there, the economic side of things.
Yes,
that opens
Senator
up.
or Representative Cash, who does represent a small portion of our school district, mostly Zionsville's area of the county, but a portion of our district. She was the author and sponsor. I believe it was 1177, but don't hold me to it. It was her desire within that bill to make it more explicit that redevelopment commissions can leverage dollars to childcare and preschool settings or early childhood education, and inserted in the language the word operations of. So it took out the ambiguity that those dollars would need to be spent on brick and mortar or property or things of that nature. So those dollars can be spent on operations of preschools and childcare, and I think that's what Mr. Parks is referring to. And so we did meet, Mr. Parks and I, as he's a member of our Lebanon RDC, as well as the board's representative. And we did have a working session with them a month or two ago and talked about that very thing. So we're continuing those conversations, and we're hoping that that will be seen as a worthy expenditure, an investment, I would say. I'd like to call it more of an investment, as we talked about earlier, of perhaps multiple RDCs that serve Lebanon schools.
And my hope is that we walk away from that workshop with the ambiguity. This will help
Yeah.
clarify some of that,
Yeah.
that some of the concerns that may have been brought up.
That came up at our meeting,
Yeah.
that we were doing that, so. Good. It's exciting times, and we're looking forward to greeting them in the fall.
All right, moving on to our consent agenda, staff matters. Dr. Milliman?
Thank you, Mr. Clauser. Just recommending approval of classified, certified, and ECA staff matters, as well as item B, staff matters described in Indiana Code 2026-511.2 this evening.
All right. Can I get a motion on that?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All right. Have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Dr. Milliman, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. I have a slight announcement for you all. So
Yeah.
There it is. Well, I just wanted to take a moment for the board and for our community in the passage of the consent agenda for staff matters. This evening, the board did just approve the appointment of Mr. Rick Hunt as the new principal of Hattie B. Stokes beginning with next school year. So that contract will begin July 1 of this coming school year. Mr. Hunt's reward for doing such an outstanding job of getting our pre-K up and going, and at least preparing for it, is that we took him out of his seat. I shared with the Hattie B. Stokes staff this afternoon when I introduced Mr. Hunt to them, hoping that we would get an affirmative vote this evening, that it doesn't seem like it's been 25 years since Jim Collins' best-selling book, Good to Great, was published, but it's been 25 years. We probably all of us here read that book, but there's a significant portion of that book that talks about the importance of getting the right people on the bus and then getting them on the right seats, getting them in the right seats. And so we were very confident and comfortable that Mr. Hunt was the right person to get on the bus. And as this opening emerged over the last several weeks, your superintendent kept coming back to the realization that we may need to move his seats. He certainly brings some expertise to us, many years experience as a K-12, K-5, well, K-12 too, administrator in Indiana in various roles. And we're very confident about that. We thank Mrs. Walters for her 2 years. She's moving on to lead at the district level. She'll be leading curriculum at a district level at North Montgomery Schools next year in the central office. And I shared with the Stokes staff this afternoon as well. That's a tough transition for us because we're not with kids every day. So I wish her well on navigating that. We know she'll do a great job, and congratulate her and thank her for what she's done. But we know that Mr. Hunt will take up that mantle and continue to make positive changes in that building. So, Mr. Hunt, would you like to come forward and maybe say a couple words to the board? Congratulations on your appointment.
Well, good evening. It seems just a couple months ago here. It's been a very quick, short time ago where I stood up here and thanked you for your trust in allowing me to come on board and help open your new preschool. And it has been a whirlwind of fun. We've put a lot of things together, as Dr. Milliman shared. We've learned a lot. The state has changed a lot. Early childhood education is certainly a challenging area, more challenging in some ways than I even anticipated. especially from that funding standpoint. But I'm excited to finish this school year and continue to help build that out with the idea also of beginning to focus on leading Hattie B. Stokes. I've been a K-5 administrator the majority of my 30-plus career, or teacher, and so that's my world, that's my heart, that's where I know I belong. Not that I didn't love the idea of preschool, and if that had been where I was on the bus, I would have enjoyed that ride tremendously, although 120 4-year-olds in the same building did start to scare me a little bit, so I started thinking about it. But no, we are excited with the idea that my wife and I talked about it, and when this came up, when Mayor Bean brought it to me and talked to Dr. Millman, this is something that is right, feels right. I think having been here in Lebanon previously and just knowing Hattie B's history and some things, I really look forward to supporting that team and making that an excellent school where folks are excited to send their children. Not that it isn't in that way now in many ways, but we're going to grow it and make it what it should be in all ways. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the trust, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. All right. Yeah, also would just like from the board to thank Ms. Walters and congratulate her on her next chapter while we welcome in Mr. Hunt and look forward to everything you're going to do there at Stokes for us. So thank you very much. Let's move on to consent agenda business matters. That's where we're at, right?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Klauser. I want to start this evening with the 10-year projection. Dr. Milliman took the opportunity to dive into the legislative update, but failed to give you the parameters that I know that you crave, the intricacies of school finance and the small changes of laws that weren't necessarily changed but clarified. A relatively benign one was the clarification of the teacher appreciation grant and the fact that TURF and FICA could be paid from that amount, which we were likely aware that they were going to do. But the other big one that does not apply to us and applies to a lot of our peers is the removal of local income taxes from school corporations. As Dr. Milliman shared, we don't collect those taxes, so the fact that those were pushed back to 2029 did provide some respite to our peers, but does not apply necessarily to us. However, what does apply to us is the board will recall that there was a provision of Senate Enrolled Act 1 that included a new property tax credit for the homeowner, which was 10% or $300, whichever was smaller of the overall tax liability was another credit that taxpayers were going to receive. At the time of passage in 2025, Senate Enrolled Act 1 did not contemplate which fund those credits would apply to, and the reading of that law as written in its first iteration applied those credits to the debt service and the operations fund as a function of the two rates of those funds. And that was a break from tradition in Indiana where the debt service fund was always protected. Indiana always wanted units of local government to be able to pay their debt. When you apply those credits, which is a funny word for saying money that you don't receive, so credit to the taxpayer, debit, if you will, to the units of local government, there was going to be a very real six-figure impact to revenue from our debt service fund that we appropriately and accurately levied, but we just would not receive. Think of traditional circuit breaker in the operations fund. The option that was given to school boards for just 2026, and we have until May 15th to notify the Department of Local Government Finance if we would like to do this, is if we would like to apply that all to operations and protect the debt service fund for 2026. 2027 and beyond, you do not have a choice. They did say, you know what, we do want to protect the debt service fund. All of those credits have to go to the operations fund. So 2027 and beyond, the budget I'll begin working on in the next 3 months, we will plan for all of those credits to be applied to the operations fund. We didn't have that information when we were doing the 2026 budget, so the concession was pick. this year. You may pick. I would say 9.9 out of 10 or 99 out of 100 of schools will choose to not protect debt service this year because they want to protect their operations fund cash balance. We will be the one, or my recommendation to the board will be that we are the one of 100 that will choose to go ahead in 2026, protect debt service. And this is why. First and foremost, a very healthy cash balance in operations. Many of our peers cannot afford to miss that revenue in operations. We have a healthy cash balance. We can do that. But what many of my peers will be doing is in 2028, that hit to cash balance that they will take in debt service this year because of laws that allow school corporations and units of local government to levy for up to 15% or 50% depending on the year in which a debt was issued. You can levy for that much beyond how much your payments are. So what does that mean? It means that the majority of our peers are going to increase artificially their debt service tax rate in 2028 to get that money back that they are choosing to lose this year. By choosing to not do that for us, that provides an amount of flexibility, nimbleness, whatever you want to call it, to keep our debt service tax rate low. The board will recall, I have no control over any tax rate other than operating referendum. I can't grow the operations fund levy any more than the MLGQ in any given year. The only fund where you are allowed to kind of levy based on your behavior is your debt service fund. So knowing that, many of my colleagues, and rightfully so, are going to choose to spare their operations fund this year, knowing that 18 months from now they're going to levy to get that money back in debt service. This protects the taxpayer of Lebanon Community School Corporation. It basically puts our cash on the line and says, you know what, we can take that hit, and it will allow us to keep our debt service rate low in the years to come by not having to levy for that cash back in debt service. So I bring that up with the 10-year forecast because what you'll notice is for the third month in a row, that yellow line has drastically changed yet again. That wasn't a spending behavior in February. That's a revenue impact based on the clarification of law that I was able to input into the cash balance. So it did lower the cash balance in operations, and quite honestly in these budgeted funds, by about $600,000 starting next year. And that's why, because we will absorb a $600 taxpayer credit, local government debit, in the operations fund this year because of a choice that we're going to make. And that's waiting on guidance from the DLGF on what we're supposed to do. So with that being said, did provide the two remaining documents, probably more than you bargained for there in a legislative update, but happy to answer any questions about that strategy or any of the other financial updates that the board may have prior to reading the claims.
No, once again, that's just the benefit of having a healthy cash balance that we've kind of planned for to be able to absorb some things we don't necessarily see coming, right?
Correct.
Any questions on that? I think
Appreciate
that makes a
it.
lot of sense, yeah.
School finance, super easy
Yeah.
to follow, right? Super easy.
All right, thanks for explaining that,
Perfect.
Mr. Dennis.
Read the claims for you.
Yeah.
Two payrolls during this time, February 20th, March 6th, total between the two, $2,497,943.63. Claims of $1,720,219.41 for a total of $4,218,163.04. Appreciate the board's consideration of those.
I'll take a motion to approve the claims and payment of payroll.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Anybody signed up with comments from the public? Okay. Takes us to our action items, starting with our change orders. Mr. Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Klauser. Change order that the board has been briefed on coming for some time has landed. Among others, I would say the others on here fairly benign, and honestly the credits received back from the change orders I think in some cases completely eclipse or negate the positive change orders shy of the high school. But with that being said, have discussed with the board for some time of some unforeseen conditions with the hydronic piping at Central Elementary, the old Central Elementary, the new preschool, and the new administration center. Again, with all the walls remaining in place and the fact that the hydronics were replaced less than 20 years ago on the preschool side, it wasn't considered that the hydronic piping was in bad shape. I've shared with the board plenty of pictures of rust covered, and quite honestly, once we saw a cross-section of that, it was alarming how close we came to flooding that building due to the deterioration, the earlier than expected deterioration of those. So a sizable but unavoidable change order to our mechanical contractor at the preschool. I will say, if there is a positive to take from this, was the knowledge of this change order before we sold our final cash flow issuance last week. Translation, I was able to effectively budget for the presence and the knowledge of this change order when we sold our remaining bonds for this project. And as I shared with the board last time, and I could give the specifics now because the sale has taken place, this overall authorization was for $65 million. As a result of our knowledge and everything of doing this in two separate issuances, we came in under budget on that $65,000 despite this change order or anything else, to the tune of $12.5 million. So we issued $52.5 million of bonds on a $65 million authorization. And so while this change order effectively does put us, I guess if you want to call it over budget on this particular project, that would be true, but a $330,000 removal and replacement of 14-year-old hydronic piping was not on anybody's radar. And so I'm happy to answer any questions about that change order, but they are in the process of doing that due to the tight timelines for this. So obviously appreciate your action on this.
Kudos to the catch too. On
I'll give kudos to Mr. Triller, who's here this evening.
Yes.
You know, one of our four guiding principles is effective and efficient operations of district and school operations. Mr. Triller wished to make sure we had a shutoff valve in that building so that if something did go wrong during the day, we could still have pre-K on one side, even if central office couldn't go to work, and vice versa. If it wouldn't have been for his foresight and wanting to get that efficiency put in, might not have caught this. So kudos to John
Yes, kudos.
for doing that.
And others might say, you can't see rusty pipe. Well, they're covered in an insulation.
Yeah.
And so it was, and again, you don't assume that pipes that are 10 years old or 15 years old are going to be in that condition. And some of us did. You gave us a tour and saw it, and it's staggering.
As much
It's not a want. It's a need.
as much water that's coming through there, and as much damage that those pipes have, it's a wonder it hasn't let loose already.
All right. If there's nothing else, then I'll take a motion to approve the change orders.
I'll make that motion.
Need a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Approval of student device purchase. Dr. Milliman, is this you?
I think that's going to Mr. Dennis as
Mr.
well.
Dennis again?
Yep, thank you. Every 2 years, we purchase student devices. In one of those cycles, we also purchase staff devices. So our normal cadence is K through 8 devices on one cycle, 9 through 12 devices plus staff devices on another cycle. It's our K through 8 turn, and we do purchase Apple devices. So this was not competitively bid, but it is a sole source procurement, which is an exception to the need to procure multiple bids. No one else other than Apple can sell iPads. So bringing that to the board, that is budgeted and paid for from debt service. That's how we've been doing that. So just our normal cadence to update those iPads for our K through 8 students.
There's no questions? I'll make a motion to approve the K through 8 iPad purchase.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
You can have iPads, just not phones.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Next meeting.
Okay, moving on to the E-rate project.
So E-rate's a federal program where the federal government reimburses public school corporations for investing in their connectivity hardware. E-rate can purchase wireless access points, switches, basically any type of infrastructure that can deliver internet to the students. That is awarded on a 5-year cycle. You have any opportunity during those 5 years. So as soon as a 5-year cycle opens up, you can do it then, or you can wait till the 5th year. I bring that up because I just came to the board for an E-rate project. It's because we waited till the 5th year of our last cycle, and we're going to go in the first year of the current cycle because that is the buildings that we're doing work in. So this is for Hattie B. Stokes and Lebanon High School, and it is for the purchase of switches and wireless access points, things of that nature. The program requires that you spend the money, and then once proof of purchase, installation, and activation is given to the federal government, they reimburse you on a 70% basis. And so what we do there is we spend the money for this, since it's being supported from bonds for the renovation project. We will then be reimbursed, and so effectively it's a spend of right around $180,000 for $630,000 worth of equipment. So vendors always remind us when we haven't spent our E-rate dollars, because they know how important that is to us, and quite honestly, not taking advantage of something like this would be negligent in terms of maintaining this hardware. So appreciate the board's approval of Moss. They were the winning. This is a competitively bid. It was competitively bid and received multiple responses, but Moss is the proposal in front of the board for consideration this evening.
Any questions? I'll take a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of approving the E-rate Moss optional transaction here tonight?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Guess that takes us to our out-of-state and overnights.
I have the background notes containing all the trips for you tonight. No, there was nothing special about any of the trips in this one, except for the one that occurred right after the last meeting, because we had a communication defect, so.
One is retroactive.
Yeah. Everybody have a chance to look over those? Any questions? I'll take a motion then to approve the out-of-state and overnight trips A through D as outlined in our background notes.
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second? I think Lisa seconded.
She seconded.
All right.
Silently.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Upcoming board meetings and events, March 30th through April 3rd is spring break, so everybody have a good and safe spring break, and then we'll be back here on April 21st for our regular